Chapter 11, from 1803 to 1824, Section 9. On the 19th July, 1823, the British legislature enacted a law for the better administration of justice in New South Wales and Van Diemen's Land, and for the better government thereof, to expire at the close of the session of Parliament, 1827. The old courts with their military functionaries were superseded, and a Supreme Court erected whose jurisdiction extended to causes criminal, civil, and ecclesiastical. The judges were entitled to the powers and jurisdiction enjoyed by the courts of King's Bench, Common Pleas, and Exchequer of England, and to inquire into and determine all treasons or other crimes committed within the Indian or Pacific Oceans. The military jury of 7 officers on full pay were retained, but the court proceeded according to the forms of civil tribunals. The trial of civil issues was confided to the judge and 2 justices of the peace chosen by the governor, the right being given to either party to apply to the court for a jury of 12 freeholders. The king was authorized to extend trial by jury at pleasure. Causes of more than £500, or a less sum with consent of the judge, were subject to appeal to the governor of New South Wales, and appeals in certain cases were allowed to the king in council. The rules of court were authorized by the king. Courts of quarter session and of request for sums under £10 were established. The governor, with the advice of a council of 5 or 7, or a major part of them, was empowered to enact ordinances not repugnant to the laws of England. The duties levied under former acts were made perpetual, but the council were inhibited from imposing a tax, except for local purposes. The governor, with 1 member assenting, could pass any law, or for the suppression of a rebellion, although all might dissent, and the king was empowered to enact an ordinance which the council might reject. It was provided also that the king might erect Van Diemen's Land into a separate colony, confer on the acting governor, in the absence of the governor-in-chief, the various powers conveyed by the Act, and, in that case, terminate the dependence of the Supreme Court on the Court of New South Wales. On these extensive powers, the checks provided were the requisite preliminary certificate of the Chief Justice, that the ordinances proposed were consistent with the laws of England, or the circumstances of the colony, the exposure of these acts on the table of the House of Commons, the obligation of the governor to show cause for the act passed in defiance of his council, the prohibition of direct taxation except for local purposes, guarantees of little value at the time of their adoption, but rendered of greater importance by the growth of freedom in the empire at large. The Act of Parliament did not pass without animadversion and discontent. Sir James Mackintosh moved that a jury of 12 should be substituted for the clause constituting a military jury, the most obnoxious portion of the bill. In this he was seconded by Mr. Wilberforce, but the proposition was defeated by a majority of 11. Mr. Canning recommended a compromise between the friends and opponents of the bill by limiting its duration to 5 years, and to this the minister assented. The capacity of the colonies to furnish jurors was long a subject of debate. Mr. Justice Bent stated that after full consideration he recommended a grand and a common jury, in conformity to the English law, and the trial of convicts by the police, but Commissioner Bigg pronounced against the scheme and was confirmed in his opinion by the leading colonists of the time. The whole state of society opposed serious objections to its adoption, and it was scarcely practicable in Van Diemen's Land. The settlers were generally desirous that Van Diemen's Land should be erected into a separate colony. To this, Sorel was opposed. He thought the measure premature, tending to augment the expenses of government. To deprive the people of the advantages of an appeal to the elder colony, and of participation in that more liberal system of government a larger community could demand. A public meeting was, however, summoned, and a petition adopted by acclamation. The sole dissentient present, Mr. Murray, was roughly treated by the petitioners. The nearer inspection of a chief authority and the more ample means possessed for good were its advantages, but it occasioned a more rigid separation in social life, multiplied offices which might have been long confined to the elder colony, and removed too far the governor and courts from effectual oversight and appeal. The colony was not sufficiently consolidated to oppose a force of public opinion to the despotic tendencies of the new constitution. This petition was forwarded to the king through Mr. Edward Barnard, the colonial agent, who owed his appointment to the suggestion of Mr. Big and the nomination of Lord Bathurst. His office was not, however, political. He was authorised to purchase stores for the local government, to give drafts on the colonial funds in exchange for cash, and otherwise to assist persons designing to emigrate to this country. He received 8%, commission and a salary until 1839, when it was withdrawn. He bore no resemblance to those bold political agents, such as Franklin, sent by the American colonists to watch their interests in Great Britain. In the early journals, the name of Sorel occurs frequently to illustrate the qualities which adorn a ruler and to point a satire on his successor. On his departure, a banquet was given him, where, said the reporter, the cup was often replenished and the flow of reason never ebbed. It was observed that the return freight for merino wool, which the colony owed to his care and foresight, anchored beside the Guildford that was to carry him home. Towards the close of Sorel's government, the commerce of the colony was assisted by the enterprise of some British merchants. A company was formed at Leith, with a capital of £100,000, professing to promote the welfare of the colonies by taking their produce in exchange for merchandise. A succession of vessels were dispatched. The first was the Greenock, among the rest the Triton, Captain Creer. These vessels introduced many families from Scotland, whose moral worth and successful enterprise have established their families among the chief of the land. The shipments provoked the anger and broke up the monopoly of the local merchants. The administration of Sorel was successful in colonial estimation. His habits were familiar without rudeness, and his fine countenance attracted the confidence of the stranger. He was accustomed to linger about the gate of Government House, chatting with the passers-by, and a slight excuse entitled the humblest ranks to prefer their solicitations. The admiration expressed by the settlers for his character was partly the result of their relative positions. He was a dispenser of crown favours, and when compelled to refuse an immoderate suitor, he could refer his request to the governor-in-chief. The rigour of King's Commissioner was softened by his official worth. Nor is it necessary to search for a censure amidst such concurrence of praise. The settlers, to express their regard, agreed to offer Sorel a testimonial of £750 value. They deprecated his recall by petition. A rare instance of popular favour, there was but one dissentient. A request so unusual might perhaps have been successful, had it not come too late. On his return to England, he received a pension, which, commencing in 1825, continued until his death, 24 years, and amounted to £11,500, more than the official salary he received during his government twice told. This pension was authorised by the Crown and charged on the colonial revenue. Sorel was colonel of the 48th Regiment. He died on the 4th of June, 1848, in the 74th year of his age. The aspect of the country at this time was not inviting to strangers, but the current of colonization was set in, and its ultimate superiority, compared with all others, became an article of Tasmanian faith. On this subject, the agricultural societies maintained a war of papers. Baron Field, the Chief Justice of New South Wales, was the champion of that country, and dwelt on its vast forests, its wool, its boundless pastures and rivers. The president of the Tasmanian agriculturists urged all in the defence of Van Diemen's Land, which became his position. At that time, protective laws had not furnished them with more formidable weapons. The trials and disappointments of the colonist pioneer will have been long since forgotten. The modern emigrant to Australia can know them only in part. He is carried to his destination by a public conveyance, at a cost determined by extensive competition. He can have the mechanical labour he may need. He can buy the stock, descended from European flocks and herds, lower than in their native regions. The choice fruit trees, flowers, and plants, which multitudes have combined to collect, he can obtain often at a gift. The costly experiments of his predecessors have established the rules which preserve his crops from destruction, or his folds from disease. There is a market for his produce, and a bank for his money, and a school for his children. A poet of some celebrity predicted the fortunes of Tasmania. The picture he drew is no unpleasing prospect for posterity. Now on my soul the rising vision warms, but mingled in 1,000 lovely forms, methinks I see Australian landscapes still, but softer beauty sits on every hill. I see bright meadows, decked in livelier green, the yellow cornfield and the blossomed bean. 100 flocks o'er smiling pastures roam, and hark, the music of the harvest. Home, methinks I hear the hammer's busy sound, the cheerful hum of human voices round, the laughter and the song that lightens toil, sung in the language of my native isle. The vision leads me on by many a stream, and spreading cities crowd upon my dream, where turrets darkly frown, and lofty spires point to the stars and sparkle in their fires. Here Sydney gazes, from the mountainside, Narcissus-like upon the glassy tide. O'er rising towns Notasian commerce reigns, and temples crowd Tasmania's lovely plains. The prospect varies in an endless range. Villas and lawns go by in ceaseless change, and wafted on the gale from many a dell, methinks I hear the village Sabbath bell. Faith upward mounts upon devotion's wings, and like the lark, at heaven's pure portal sings. From myriad tongues the song of praise is poured, and o'er them floats the Spirit of the Lord. End of chapter 11, being chapter 2, from 1803 to 1824, section 9.